My name's Paula Hamlin. This is a interview of my father, Paul Lamar McKinney. This is on December 26, 2014 in Russellville, Arkansas, where my father lives. Dad, give your name, spell your last name please, and tell us where you were born.
Paul Lamar McKinney, MC, capital K-I-N-N-E-Y, and I was born in Rison, R-I-S-O-N, Arkansas, on the 11th of November, 14th of November, 1921.
Who were your parents and what did they do?
My father was Norman Edger McKinney. He was in, they call it the furnishing business back in those days. His father, my grandfather, was owner of quite a bit of land in the state, and they had sharecroppers who produced cotton mostly, cash crop in those days. And when the Depression came along, it kind of shut that down, and Daddy became a buyer of land and cotton mostly. My mother was a daughter, the baby daughter of the Cash family, her father, and she is also the sister of Ray Cash, who's Johnny Cash's father. And she was working in a telephone exchange in Rison when they got married.
And her name?
Mabel Clara Cash was her given name.
Who were your brothers and sisters? Give their names, and then did any of them serve in the military?
My oldest brother was Edgar Fay McKinney, and he was a regular Navy recruit. He had joined the Navy in 1936 when he was 16 years old. And he served in it, of course, all during the war and even after the war. And my middle brother was N.A. McKinney. He had no given names other than N.A. until he went and was drafted, and the Army forced him to take a name, and Norman Allen McKinney is what he wound up with. And he was in the Air Force.
Your sister?
And my sister was Doris Geraldine McKinney, and of course she wasn't drafted or wasn't in the age group to get in, and she was stayed at home with Mother and Daddy during the war.
Dad, what did you do before you entered the service? What was your work, and where were you?
Well, after graduating from high school, I went to Dallas, Texas, went to Fry Aircraft School and learned the basics of aircraft, mostly riveting and basics of blueprint reading and other things, skills necessary in the manufacturing of aircraft. And on the completion of the school, you were guaranteed a job in California. And there was a bunch of boys from Rison and southern area of Arkansas and Texas who were all going to that school, and we all were sent to California, to Long Beach, to I don't remember Norfolk. I don't remember the name of the aircraft company we were sent to, but we got there on a Sunday, and we decided they were closed. There was no activity at that, and we went to San Diego, just looking around, looking over the country. And when we got to San Diego, we got near it was Consolidated Aircraft. They had a big banner across the street, help wanted. And we just decided we'd apply, and every one of us got a job and went to work the next day. So we never went back to the Los Angeles area to look for work.
And where did you live when you were in San Diego?
In several different places, but some of the numbers I don't remember. But the main place was up on the University Drive, up on what they call Pringle Hill. It was up the main streetcar line from downtown right there, and then it turned down University and went east to San Diego State, which they call University Drive.
And on Coronado Island?
I did live for a short time on Coronado Island. A friend of mine from Rising was a regular Navy employee, and he was
Civilian?
yeah, and he had a room over on Coronado Island, and he offered me a real deal to come, and live at the same place with him. Until after I got to Coronado Island, I found out that the ferry is the only way to get on and off. And the fog's sometimes so bad to walk from my house, which is about 3 blocks from the ferry landing, to get on the ferry to go to work, you'd have to drag 1 foot in the gutter to be sure where you're going. And I didn't take up that too. So I soon got off of that. My last street address there was Curlew Street. I don't remember the house number. It was in the home of a construction worker whose husband was employed at the new Marine base that was being built right north of San Diego. They treated like family,
Well, when did you enlist, or were you drafted during World War II?
Well, I was working for Consolidated, and had been for a couple of 3 years, and I tried to enlist, but they wouldn't accept my volunteer because I was classified as a 1A essential worker. And I was told, and I tried to enlist in the Navy because my older brother was in the Navy. And they told me that I'd have to get that draft reservation changed before I could enlist. And so I went back to work and told them I wanted to join the Navy, and they said the only way I could get my draft reservation changed was to quit work there. So I didn't quit work, but I slowed down the work until finally they agreed to it. And when they agreed to it, the Navy called me and told me to come on, that everything was ready. Because I had done everything necessary to be enlisted except get that draft register changed.
So your enlistment was after what, Pearl Harbor? After the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, in the same year. No, well, let's see, in December 7th, it is 42, I don't remember the exact date.
Yeah. Do you remember much of your early training and any of the instructors?
No, I don't. It was, they was lined up out there, one right after another, and after, I believe it was 3 weeks boot camp, that those of us who had experience that the Navy thought they might use were invited to go over to over to North Island and be interviewed for a rating. And I was one of those that went, and I came back in the third class, aviation metalsmith, and I had to change my company number because of that. And I was bragging about that. I didn't know that that was a ticket to sea, though. A few days I found out why I got that. Wound up in San Francisco, waiting on a ride to the war.
How did you adapt to military life, like the barracks, the food, social life?
Social life, there wasn't any. It just what you, the other sailors was in there is who you associated with. And after you once left Pearl Harbor, the only time you saw a woman was when the hospital ship came alongside to transfer somebody off, you know. And it was especially after the first of the war.
Did they have any functions for you at any of your stops? Did they have dinners or parties or dances or?
We had R&R, what they call rested.
Relaxation.
Relaxation. And it was just where we were, what type of operation you had. It's usually, if you was aboard a capital ship or something, you were allowed to take 2 bottles of beer off the ship with you, out if you was at Bog or Espiritu Santos or somewhere else out in the fleet anchorage, where they just throw the anti-submarine nets out, and the sailors would, you know, go swimming in there, and that was the recreation we got.
Tell me about where you served during the war, how long you were basically in the war, did you come back home some or come back to the States? Where were you, the names of some of the ships you were on, and just kind of like your life during the war?
Well, several ships that I don't even remember the names of, most of them were the Jeep aircraft carriers. When they first came out, I was there at Ford Island in Pearl Harbor, and the naval aviation was in terrible shape, and the aircraft that had survived the attack needed repair and replacement, and so it was demand for everything. Hurry, get it up, get it out, get it over to where the war was actually being fought at that time. It's, even some of the commercial aircraft were converted to fighting aircraft by adding machine guns and bomb sights and bomb racks and those kind of things. And we were, I guess, I don't know where you say permitted or required, but anyhow, we wound up taking some of them in and down to Australia, because that was the place that they most feared the Japs was going to hit next. And the main ships that I remember was the last one I was on was a Bennington, and I really wasn't attached to the ship. I was in Air Group 1, Torpedo Squadron 1, which the squadron was attached to the ship temporarily. Even our area of the ship was out of bounds for the ship's company, so we were separated from the ship's company anytime the air group was aboard a carrier. And on let's see, Bennington, the
Norfolk? Were you on the Norfolk?
no.
Barnes, you had barns listed.
Well, some of those little ships are the ones that I remember that just being moved from one place to another on.
Okay, I have the Yorktown
Yes, it's on the Yorktown
and the Kenmore.
and the who?
Kenmore, USS Kenmore was
Yeah,
one.
that was another ship we moved from one place to another. I don't remember exactly where we moved from or to.
What were some of the jobs that you had in it being attached to this air group? What did you do on the carrier, on the planes? What?
I didn't know nothing on the carrier to maintenance of the carrier, or it all devoted to the squadron that I was attached to. I was attached to Torpedo 1, but the that squadron consists of fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes, and we were subject to have to help maintain any and all of those aircraft that we had on there. And if you wasn't flying and had aircraft that needed work, you did it. Because there's nobody else, you couldn't send it out to the local garage. You did it.
And when you were on the planes, what were some of the jobs that you did when you were in the air?
Well, at the very first of the war, when started peopling, as we called it, the aircraft, the torpedo plane required 3 pilot, a gunner, and a radioman. But as the war went on and the casualties mounted, they were reduced to 2 people, pilot and radio gunner, they called him then. And the difference being the radio was down in the bilge of the airplane, and the gunner was in the upper turret, and he had to be real quick to do both. So
So you did both at times?
yeah.
Did you see many kamikaze pilots or planes?
Also, lots of planes, lots of parts of kamikazes, because they finally put 5-inch anti-aircraft guns, radar guided, aboard the battleships. They found out the battleship, who had been the capital ship, was demoted, and the aircraft carriers became the capital ships. And so the fleet, is in battle formation, usually had at least one battleship running along beside it. Instead of using the 16-inch guns, they had these 5 inches all over that thing. Looked like a porcupine. When you saw them firing, well, all you could find from the kamikaze was pieces of it coming down somewhere. And so when they were firing, if you had any smarts, you wasn't out uncovered on deck anyhow. Because all kinds of stuff that went up, come down. And it did well to remember that.
Did you develop friendships among your the people that you served with while you were in the war?
Oh yeah, yes, there's several. Some of the names I don't remember. There's one old boy from Lake Kentucky who'd been a railroader, and he had problems then like I have now. Only his was on his knees, and but because of the way they did those railroad wheels over the years, they'd cut those cartridges, and he was in the hospital in Chicago, I believe. That's the last I heard of him. I don't know, but we did have an association. Air Group 1 had annual reunions in different places at Oklahoma City, at
Charleston.
in Florida, at Pensacola, Florida, at
Charleston. Then you go Carolinas.
where?
Charleston, wasn't it?
Yeah, Charleston, South Carolina. Well, really, Pilot's Point is across the river from Charleston. That was the last one we had, and so many time and claimed so many people couldn't get enough together to have the reunion, so they quit that. And I lost track of everybody that was in there. I have not heard from any member or the association, which sometimes was wives, and so far as I know, I'm the only survivor, although I'm sure I'm not. I just don't know where they are.
When you were overseas, how did you stay in touch with your family and friends back home?
Didn't very well, because we changed ships so much, we changed stations so much, and you get some letters and the whole front of it would be covered with stamps of where it'd been, you know, and followed their way of postal. I don't know how they did it, even kept up with it. But if you got a letter, once a month, something like that, that was a big mail call. You know.
Did they censor some of your mail? Was some of your mail censored?
Every bit of it. All your cameras were confiscated. Well, they didn't call it confiscated. They kept them safely for you, but you didn't have them. I had an old 616 camera that I still have, and I've given it to my daughter Paula, and she has that in her war room, I guess she calls it.
When you were given a recreation time in the war, when you had your R&R, where did you go? What did you do? What was a fun thing you liked to do?
Well, you know, the normal thing, they had baseball, usually, because there's no facilities usually for that number of people that went, and it usually was in what they called a fleet anchorage, was just a place that the fleet could go in and anchor. And Bogwag was one of the largest one out there in the far Pacific. And Espiritu Santos, which was a French island that we used to go into once in a while, and you know, they had better facilities there. They had a pet name for it, but I'd rather not give it here.
Where were you? What were you doing when Japan surrendered?
Let's see. I don't remember what I was doing now. The daily routine of the squadron every morning would meet in the ready rooms. They'd have the plan of the day laid out and the flights of the day, who was going and who was staying, and what pilot didn't feel like or was sick that day, and whose plane you'd fly with. You know, they had a yeoman who made all that up, and that was all decided for you. And once in a while, it'd be a little, somebody didn't want to fly with a certain pilot, or a certain pilot didn't want crewmen with them, and they'd work it out, you know.
So tell me about Tokyo Bay.
Big puddle of water is all I can tell you. And I tell you what, that was a sight to see the fleet. I mean, I'd say there's thousands of ships. I don't know what their actual count was, but as far as you could see was ships from PCs, the patrol chasers, which is one of the smallest seagoing vessels, and to the carriers, which was the largest at that time. And we were arranged in a prearranged anchorage that you anchored to where you were facing in certain directions, where in case of a sudden attack or whatever, airplane decks like the Bennington that we owned, the torpedo planes could take off and land with the ship at anchor. So, like the fighters and the bombers, they couldn't take off, and they could either take off or land or not both.
So y'all were there when the peace treaty was being signed.
We were, yeah, the whole fleet was in it.
Yeah, go ahead and tell me, I'm sorry.
We were chosen, the planes of the Bennington, because I guess we were in the most advantageous condition there to deliver the film of the surrender ceremonies. Had to be flown to somewhere over around Tokyo, which was the other end of the bay that we were in at that time. And then they in turn were sent back to the United States. That's why the way they got the surrender ceremonies that quick, you know. But it wasn't, I don't remember the exact date we went into Tokyo Bay now, but it was several days before the surrender ceremony. And none of us was really at ease all that time, because here we are, and holding the barrel of that big gun, covered the entrance to Tokyo Bay there, weighed about 10 pounds. So it was in August, I know, and the fleet started assembling in there, and it took several days for everybody to get in there, and the Marines had gone around and disarmed all these shore guns and any other kind of military activity that could affect the fleet being in there, and hung sheets out. And it looked like a wash day. I tell you what, they had, I've never seen so many gun emplacements in my life. and we were located on the side of Tokyo Bay nearest the, we called it Yokohama and Yokosuka, but some of the later people called it other things. I don't know what. It was a battleship there that had been sunk, sitting in the mud, had been there several years, and that was just to, if you come back that way off a bombing run and wanted some practice, just drop it on that battleship. Then when they finalized, I guess, the program for the surrender, they wasn't having very much luck getting the Japanese head up to the emperor to, you know, agree to the surrender and all that. And that's one thing I'll have to say about old General MacArthur. He says he will be here, or he will agree to it. I personally will go get him. And that, I think that was the straw that broke the camel back. He did agree. I didn't see him. I don't know if he ever showed or not. I wasn't looking for him really. And it was a lot of celebration as far as we could go, but we wasn't allowed any intoxicants that the Navy could control off of the ship. But they had to start letting the people get off of there, because several days sitting there at anchorage in a strange bay is not very resty. It's once they had arranged the carriers and the other ships, especially the capital ships, into certain areas because of their maneuvering ability or ability to even get out of the bay. It had to be sequenced so, you know, that the ships that carried big guns could get out maybe between the carriers, because the carriers was really the only weapon we had when we was in the bay there. And we allowed a few days, I don't remember now, about a week I think of shore duty, but go on 10-man parties with one man with sidearms, and you were in an area that was controlled by armed Marines. So it was pretty well controlled. And they worked out who would handle what prisoner of war camps, helped them to get free from the Japanese, and find out what their greatest needs and emergencies were. And my ship, Bennington, was one of the few ships that could take off to the land at Anchorage, and because of the location of the ship and the power of the planes and etc. So we dropped all kinds of first communication equipment, then armament, and then food and medicine and those kind of things. And we received a nice letter from the Prisoner of War Association thanking the pilots and crew of the ship Bennington for dropping their relief funds, you know. And I have it in a book somewhere, but I don't know where it is.
Could you see the POWs when you dropped the supplies? Could you see them?
They were told to stay in the buildings, and they were kind of arranged like streets, you know, building on one side, building on the other side. Some streets were wider than the other, and they were told to stay out of that open area while the packages were being dropped, because we were dropping them from such a low altitude, if they hit them, it'd probably kill them, and we probably did kill some, because you couldn't keep them out of the streets. They had to get their hands on a gun or food or whatever, you know.
So after the peace treaty was signed, where did you go and how did you get released from the Navy?
Well, it was all down came out between the time that the surrender, the negotiations started and the surrender ceremony, deciding how the people would be returned to the States. And people that had several years or months in the Pacific, in the combat area, were awarded so many points, and about half of the air group had enough points to, you know, because this wasn't the first air group we'd been in. He said, if you choose to be discharged now, we have to remove you from the squadron and the ship and ship you to Okinawa, where all people demand return will go. And then you'll be assembled in some order and sent back to the state. The group commander decided he had to do it a different way, and the carrier used, I don't remember how many days now, we just got out there and messed around. They called it a weather patrol, and until the people that decided that they would stay, the people, every man, enlisted man and officer who had enough points to get out had to sign a 90-day extension in order to stay with the group. And we were all told that that was just a formality. So that once you got back to the States when you practically free, you know, that wasn't necessarily true. In my case, it wasn't true. I got back to Little Rock on leave. I had a 30-day leave, and then I was fooling around there, and I said, well, I got to go to Little Rock and get my discharge. They told me I'd be discharged to Little Rock. Got to Little Rock, no discharge. You got, I don't know how many more weeks to serve in the Navy to complete that 90-day extension, and them SO guns sent me back to Alameda. I had to go back to Alameda to be discharged, and when I got back there, I was one bad dude, I'll tell you. And so I was out there, and I guess maybe I got a little unruly or something. I wound up in the chaplain's office, and he wanted to know what I was doing there, and I told him what the situation. He said, now you done got me mad. He says, just listen to your story, I'm mad too if they do you that way. He says, come on. We went down there, we went back to everything. I don't remember how many, when you check into a station, there's a bunch of offices you have to go to and be interrogated or whatever. And we went back through all them, and he canceled them out, and he went over, took me over there to the discharge, and told him to send me over to discharge area. And the bypass, they had what they called Splinter City. There, just a bunch of barracks where they just throw these guys in when they come back. They had the hot bed deal there. If you come up to a bed and you want to go to bed, and you feel in the bed, if it wasn't warm, it's yours. Get in it. And then that went on for a few days, and we wasn't making much progress. He sent us to Treasure Island. And I tell you what, you couldn't get on Treasure Island unless somebody got off. You never seen such a crowd of people in your life. And I stayed over, I don't remember how long I stayed over there, several days, maybe a week or two. Finally, I said, I ain't putting up with this no more. And you ride that key system for a dime. And I got it on Treasure Island, went to San Francisco, and they had one of the major bonding companies had I don't know, have the multi-store building rented over there, and you could go in there and spend the night for 50 cents. It cost you, a cot. You got a cot, and, I don't remember what else, bath, and a few things. So I went over there, and I had left I knew I was going over there when I left Treasure Island. I went by the Bastard Arms Shack there and left my name and where I'd be, to let me know if my name come up on a draft. So it was 2 or 3 weeks before my name come up on a draft. Then I went back over there and got on the draft, and we had to, I don't even remember where we went to make up. Must have been in Oakland somewhere, but we made up this train of draftee or discharged people who were headed for Billington, Tennessee, and it was some that went to Chicago, but they sealed the cars where you couldn't go from one car to another, or one portion of the train. And when we got it, where that bunch in Chicago got unhooked from our train, we got hooked on to one coming from the East Coast that was going to Billington. And they didn't seal him, and you talk about party time from there to Billington now. There was a bunch of waves on that and everything. So we got to Billington, and we got off the train and went down to the air station, and the old doctor down there examining the people as they come in, and he about the first, I don't know how many, he said, whoa, 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 where did all these people come from? They told him. He said, if you take them back over there on the other side, and we're gonna hold them a few days till they sober up or whatever. they can't be discharged like this. So they did. We went over there for a few days. Then finally they did. They called us in, discharges. So, you know.
So when did you finally get home?
The next day after I got out there. It took us one night to get off of Beale Street down there. If you had a ruptured duct, as they call this, when you got your discharge, they give you a pin that, I don't know where the name ruptured duct came from, but that's what they called it. But you could walk down the street there, and civilians see you with a ruptured duct on, they had to buy you a drink or do something you had. And so it was party time for a while.
So did you ride a bus back to Rising?
Yeah, yes.
How was it difficult readjusting to not being in the military after the war?
Oh, very, very hard, very hard.
What were some of the issues?
Being around people that you had to watch how you dressed, and whether you were dressed or not, and you know, just normal everyday routine was different. You had a certain time to eat. You either eat in there set time or you didn't eat. That, especially aboard ship, where the squadron each had their own ready room and their own emergency dining room up there. We carried our own rations because they flew, you know, 24 hours a day. Somebody was coming and going all the time. And they always had Spam or something for a sandwich, coffee always on, and just different, whole different deal.
Did you find you had to kind of clean up your language a little bit when you got home?
Well, yes. Majority of the people in the squadron was not too bad gutter with their language. Although I wound up with a bunch of boys from the East Coast up there, and their everyday talking is considered pretty gutter. Although I had one guy who wound up to be a priest out in Spalma, who I visited with him a couple of three reunions since then, and I went out to visit him in his church one time out there. I don't know where he is now, not where he's still alive.
Did you find it difficult to find a job after the war?
Well, really wasn't looking for a job. You know, they gave you that 52-20. They gave you $20 a week for a year to find it. Well, my mother was running a dry goods store at that time, and so I spent the year looking for a job, drawing about $20 a week, which you could get by on within. And my wife and I lived with Mother and Daddy there, you know, while that went on, and everything worked out fine.
And your wife's name?
Margie Gray Cable.
Are you a member of any veterans organization?
VFW.
And have been active in that through the years?
Yeah, I was pretty active in it as long as I could, get around well.
How did your wartime experience affect your life?
Not really a whole lot, because I had been in the industry prior to the Navy, and I continued almost all the same work, different model aircraft is around, and the people that made it to the squadron level had some experience in aviation, and so it was pretty well. The confinement was the main thing, being months at sea, and we had a get-up stand on the ship where you could go get Coca-Colas or some kind of drink, or ice cream occasionally and things like that. So it wasn't all battle all the time, and even when you were in the battle zone, and normally there was time between, say, midnight and 2 a.m. when the ships, like big capital ships, like the carriers were, we carried supplies, food supplies, ammo supplies, gas supplies for the smaller ships, and the ships would come together and transfer supplies at that time of night. So if you wasn't involved in resupplying a ship, you better get yourself in bed or somewhere else, or you'd wind up on one of them.
So your career after the military still involved aircraft?
Aircraft all the time. This was being worked for major aircraft companies. The Consolidated, who I worked for before the war, finally consolidated with WWII, and they consolidated with somebody else and became another company, and all that. And I was looking at who I thought was the best, or and I figured civil aircraft was just coming into being really business at that time. That I felt like big manufacturer of civil aircraft would be the best deal, and that's why I chose Boeing. And I had a friend that I had been in the Navy with who worked for Boeing, and he told me how to get in, how to get around, and I went up there and didn't have any problem to get the job. And I was lucky enough at Boeing that I wound up in experimental, and I guess I was satisfactory to the people who run experimental, and Boeing didn't have a permanent experimental shop. The way they do, they'd work a contract, and once the contract was over, they'd disband that whole shop. And if you would be laid off, you may be laid off for 30 minutes or 30 days, but then you was laid off the company, and you could draw your unemployment if you wanted to, or there was, work around that area you could do. And then when they found the job, a new contract come up, you get on in, you worked it through this contract. And I had the pleasure, I guess, of working on the first B-52 ever built. And I left the company the day that we rolled the X-1 experimental across the road over to the airport from the factory there.
And you finished your career with aviation at what company?
Textron Corporation, which is Bell Helicopters, when I was working for. But I had worked in the meantime for, it was United Aircraft when, I can't even remember
Chance Vaught?
the name now, Chance Vaught. When Chance Vaught moved to Texas, well, I moved back. I was going to go to Wichita, Kansas to work for Boeing on a transfer. And because my parents were getting old and my wife's mother was a widow woman, and we needed to be back, I spent everything I made going back and forth to Arkansas. Because there wasn't any civil aviation at that time, and the roads wasn't any toll roads or big roads. 2-lane roads is a 5-day trip from Arkansas to Seattle at that time. And I looked out there. I was going to Wichita, and I was at Rising, and I had a letter from the home office stating that the job offer that I had been offered by mail was good for 1 more week. And at that time, it had to go through the whole thing again. So I said, well, I gotta go take this job. And I went, started to go down there, and at that time, they had a big, bad weather forecast. He couldn't get up to Arkansas. He had to go to Dallas and pick up the road there and go to Wichita. So I got to Dallas, I believe it was on a Sunday afternoon, and I just got me a hotel room in Dallas, and he got the Dallas paper, and I never seen as many job wanted things in my life as I've seen in that paper. And I knew where that North American plant was out there because I'd been there when I had been to Fry going to school. And I went out there, and early in the morning, and I had a job, and they was trying to get me to go to work that afternoon. And I told them I had arrived living in a suitcase. I got to go find some place to live. But anyhow, I worked 10 years for Chance Vaught, had a very good, and found out after it was over with that the reason why I had done so well was because of that letter of recommendation that Boeing had sent along with my transfer to Wichita. And I had a top secret clearance, which was very expensive for a company to get a employee through to get the rating where they could work on those kind of things. And so I have to help deliver the last Corsair that was built. I had all kinds of early experience in Martin Baker ejection seats, all type of different bobbings and runs and everything with those planes, and I thought I was exceptionally lucky to have those kind of programs and have people willing to hire you on the strength of somebody else's recommendation.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who hear your interview?
Straighten up and fly right, and try to stay out of the, take a good political job and send the others to do the dirty work. It ain't no fun. It's lonesome.
Well, we're honored that you served.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it.